Hello, and welcome to Strategy Made Simple. My name is Matthew Rempel, and today I'm going to be talking with somebody who has had lots of experience in building new social enterprises. A big part of our conversation in this episode is around his journey to where he is now, the many different enterprises he's been a part of, and the risks that were taken in order to get there. We're also going to talk about the steps that he takes to reduce that risk, and also some big ideas about how we can change the way we spend money in government and in the public sphere. Initially, this interview was about him stepping into a new role as executive director of The Wrench in Winnipeg, and he's been there at time of recording about 3 or 4 months, and we will get there. It's a part of the story, but there's also a lot more to take in. Before we started recording, we were talking about his work with Encompass Coop, a group of people that are trying to work at changing the way we spend money in the public sphere and make social enterprise a bigger part of the economy. I hope you enjoy it. My guest today is...
My name is Stewart. I'm the executive director at The Wrench in Winnipeg. I'm also a partner with Encompass Coop, also out of Winnipeg.
So we were just talking about Encompass Coop, and you said you were working together with Sean Loney for about 3 years. I know that was Encompass.
That was Encompass.
Is that thing wrapped up, or?
No, but it's changing. It's going to be different. I've worked with, my experience with Sean and I worked together very closely for 12 years.
Okay.
And then super closely for the last 3 years. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it'll just be something different.
Right.
We have to wait until people are ready to catch up with what we're selling. we're a little bit ahead of the times, I think.
Time to educate people on how things could be.
That's all we want. That's all we want. Just how things could be, and it's the same thing. Like people intuitively, nobody ever said no to us.
Right.
Right, and because we would sit down and agree that we, could roughly anticipate what was going to happen, and what that would look like, and then we could also anticipate that if we made a change, we could affect that trajectory.
Yeah, get a bit ahead of the curve before things are set in stone.
Get ahead of the curve, and the good thing, the thing that we were talking about was that we could, by implementing a change now, we could anticipate, not having to continue to do what we have been doing, and we could get different results. Mm-hmm. And everyone agreed. No one ever said no. And then that would be the end of it. Everyone would just leave it at that. So I think it was just maybe a lack of courage. And for the most part, I think it was just a lack of accountability for managing public money. To be honest, the way that the books work doesn't anticipate the future.
Right. Okay. So existing systems are preventing the structures you're hoping to be building.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I'd like to come back to that later because I feel like there's a lot more to that conversation.
For sure. We could have we could have you do a separate podcast just on full cost accounting.
Maybe we will. But for now, I'd like to focus in on your work at The Wrench.
Sure.
So for how I understand it, the impact of The Wrench is trying to both make biking more accessible and by providing the skills to people so that they can repair their own bikes. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Okay. So then how do you chain those impacts together into your operations, into the work that you're doing?
Sure. The how I think about it is the wrench is like two kind of mandates. The first one is about skills, mm-hmm. and being able to attain the skills to make your bike safe and to keep it that way.
Yeah.
We also wanted to make it so that biking can be your first choice for getting around.
Yeah.
Right. And then the second mandate really is an environmental recycling mandate, and that there's a lot of energy goes into building these bikes in the first place, and they should not be disposable. and and they kind of are. They kind of treat it that way. So there's a lot of like incredible amount of energy that goes into building those things, and it is extremely wasteful for them just to get scrapped because people don't understand how to like change out a chain, or the tire's flat and it's tricky to change a tire.
Right. So almost falling into the broader consumeristic trap of every 10 years need a new bike instead of just really knowing how to properly tune it up and keep it running well.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot. I mean, like there's just like a bunch of things that you can do that people just don't know they can do to keep a bike running.
Right.
Right. If it's something very serious, like your bike's all like really messed up, like take it to a shop.
Yeah.
Right. And those guys have like really specific tools that not everyone has, and that's fine. Pay them a fair rate, and they'll put your bike back together. Yeah. So that's it.
But for the more everyday kind of things.
For the everyday kind of stuff that will allow you to make sure that your bike is safe and that you can get from A to B, right? Those are skills we want that everyone should know how to do.
Right. So then the training aspects, helping people learn how to maintain their own bicycles, contributes towards that culture of if something happens while I'm out on the road somewhere, I can just deal with it.
Yeah.
Okay. So then also, I know you deal with the affordability and the ability to have your own bike. How does that all fit in together?
Well, so there was just a very obvious opportunity in that all these bikes just needed like some work to make them serviceable.
Meaning?
In our landfill, and there's 3 recycling depots in Winnipeg. People just leave their bike there, right? For recycling, they're done with it, or they themselves are just done with it, and they just like let it go back into either the recycling stream or the waste stream, and so there was just an opportunity. These bikes they needed work, and they were there. The material was there, and being able to put them back on the road, and do so at a price point that is achievable. So the wrench does a good job of that, and we can do that while providing and creating jobs.
Go on.
Right. So I mean, like to fix these, people sometimes think that the bikes are free because they were just sitting there. It takes some doing to rejuvenate the bikes.
One could say.
One could say. It takes some doing. Anyway, we're set up to do that, and we can process all those bikes, and we hire folks and create jobs to do that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I've had the pleasure of being in the shop where all this work happens, and you have racks upon racks of junker bikes that you're going to tear apart and take all of the useful pieces out of.
Yeah.
Just so that you can sort them so that they're ready there when you need them for a bike that can be salvaged.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's how all those different pieces fit together. Is there anything I'm missing about that environmental angle feeding into the accessibility angle, feeding into the knowledge?
Well, the main point, I think, is about making biking accessible.
Right.
Right. So the things that we can do, that we can do directly is we can teach people to fix their bikes.
Yep.
Right. And give people the skills to do that maintain their bikes with confidence. And then the other component about that is about learning to ride and having the confidence to ride in Winnipeg, given the level of our bike network, right? We've made progress.
For sure.
We've made progress. We got a long way to go.
Yeah, we do.
And so while that progress is continuing, being able to navigate from like where you are to where you want to go, and do that safely,
Right.
And it should not just be for right now. A lot of the time, people would describe it as like those are the strong and the brave.
Especially if you're talking winter bikes.
If you're talking winter bikes, and anyway, it doesn't need. We shouldn't characterize it that way. We should those are the folks who are comfortable.
Yeah.
Right. And they're just comfortable because they have experience and they know what they're doing. So we want to be able to offer programming that allows people to build confidence. So just, knowing how to ride it in traffic, right? Knowing how to like map out your route from where you are to where you want to go, how to lock your bike up when you get there, and how to do that at night, and how to do that when the weather's inclement. Yeah, so just there's a bunch of stuff. And the last time any of us got some concentrated education about that, we were maybe 5 or 6, and that was it. So
yeah, usually a little bike training in elementary school, and that's all you get.
Yeah, and at that time we were told to stay on the sidewalk because the road was dangerous.
Yep.
Right.
Because the infrastructure was even worse than it is now.
Because the infrastructure was worse.
It wasn't there.
And we were bad at biking in traffic when we were 6. I understand that. You know, I have a 4-year-old. If she strays into the street, I tell her to get back on the sidewalk because she's bad at biking on the street. And cars are fast, and we still have 50 kilometers on residential streets, and that's like tough. So it's not worth the risk for me.
For sure.
But when she's 12, I don't want to drive her around all the time. She doesn't want me to drive her around all the time.
Nope.
No, I'm not that. It's kind of a trap that people fall into, where you become like the term is like soccer mom, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Right, and that means, so you can sign your kid up for sports. That means you have to go to sports too. And
The joke in my family, there are 3 of us boys, and it was just, they were the taxi service all evening because 3 different locations to bring people, just impossible.
Just impossible. So I want her to be able to go to soccer. I'll go and watch her play soccer because it's a fun thing to do. But if she wants to go and see friends, if she wants to go and do a thing, when she's 12 and after she's 12, I want her to have some independence. Yeah.
So then what are some of the specific things, the actual day-to-day things you're doing at the wrench in order to try to push that forward?
So we have developed courses,
okay,
right, for kids, for children on the repair stuff and on the riding stuff, in order for them to have develop skills, and that it's supervised, and there's instructors who will coach people through all that.
So this is wrench staff heading into a location where there's a bunch of kids or youth?
They come to us right now.
Okay.
Yeah, they come to us right now. The type of stuff that we're doing, especially around riding, really should be covered in school. And as part of either phys ed, or some divisions have outdoor phys ed, the actual being able to balance on a bike and go fast and stop and turn and do all that's like a phys ed type of thing. And that should be really taught to younger children, and then later on when they're youth, when they're 13, 14, in phys ed, they should be taught to do urban cycling.
Yeah.
Yeah, and those skills are, in my opinion, much more relevant to our most people who live in cities, especially in Manitoba, where we have kind of one big city right now, and is much more useful of a life skill than badminton. Things like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So then, who are the particular groups? You've mentioned children and youth so far. Are there any particular groups that the wrench is primarily trying to reach?
That's a funny question. That's not a funny question. That's an interesting question. In trying to enact our broader mission around making it able for people to bike around and being their first choice for getting around, it's important that we reach out to people who are vehemently against that.
You gotta make everyone comfortable for this to actually happen.
Yeah, and it's funny. So this is I believe this is something new that I'm bringing, because there's a bit of a resistance to incorporating people who are not super into our stuff, right? And because it's like there's some convincing to do, and those folks are not immediately supportive of what we're doing. They think we're going to, I don't know, use resources that are, or get in their way, or I don't know, make their commute a little longer, things like that. Biking culture in Winnipeg is, for a long time, spent the majority of its time like being really scrappy and having to push and fight for what they have, what we've gotten so far. And we kind of, we're like, we've made progress. So to go further, we really need to make it a more of a priority for everybody. And that means appealing to everybody.
Yeah.
So I think we converted the people who were ready to be converted. And now we got to go get more people.
Right.
Getting more people in. Yeah.
So then how are you trying to reach those people?
Oh, we're working on it.
I'm not assuming this is an easy task, but there are obviously some ways that you're thinking about that could invite people in to what has been historically a bit of a rebel group.
A bit of a rebel group. Yeah, they're a little punky.
Just a little.
A little punky. I mean, there's as a sector, there's lots of different things that we could be doing. As a sector, we could also be coordinating more than we have been.
Always.
I think the most important part is just to be non-judgmental, right? I don't want to. If you tell somebody they're wrong, right? That's not a great way to open that conversation. We want to make it fun and easy as possible. Yeah. So that is about inviting people to events, to experience stuff, to remove barriers, and to be supportive of success.
Right. Do you have any particular examples of what an event that would remove barriers looks like?
You know what? Bike Winnipeg does. I'll give them a plug. They do great work.
Absolutely.
Yeah. They run these Bike to the Future public open group rides in the summer, and they take people for an hour and a half loop. It's family friendly. It's like a slow roll. It's for to incorporate children, and they're not. The Bike Winnipeg itself does a good job about not being preachy about it. There's many of the folks, the organizers are activists, right? Yeah, that's fair.
They're the people who want to make a change. They're going to bring the right people together to do it.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that they're leading the charge in these events.
Yeah. We're encouraging people to see Winnipeg from perspective of being able to ride around and just what that feels like. Because like lots of people don't know. And so like anybody who participates in those Bike Winnipeg events comes away having had a good time, having run over like many potholes, right?
Absolutely.
Having been maybe passed by a bunch of like big vehicles who are going like a little quick, and being on infrastructure that is disconnected.
Right, because in Winnipeg, the actual bike network doesn't connect very well to go places.
It doesn't get you all the way there.
Yeah.
It gets you like these disjointed, right? So when you were like, you will have the pleasure of riding on these separated pathways where you feel safe, right? And then you'll have to make these like bridge these gaps where you don't feel safe.
Right, because then you're just on the city streets.
You're just on the city streets, or maybe there's like some like white paint that's protecting you, right? That
yes,
doesn't
bicycle gutters.
The bicycle being in a bicycle gutter, and that like doesn't feel super secure.
Yeah.
So having gone through that, you might the next time you are driving and you see a cyclist in the bike gutter, you give them a little more room.
Because you can empathize.
You can empathize.
So it sounds like it's mostly for those intro moments. It's about getting people out of the perspective of, if I'm going somewhere, I have to drive. And instead opening up to, I'm not just a driver, but I'm a person going somewhere.
I'm just a person going somewhere. Yeah, and that's a very good way to frame it. And that's a much more healthy way to frame it. Like people get stuck in identity things. Like, I am a driver. People don't identify as drivers, but like, I am a cyclist, you know? And if that is like, you just end up digging your heels in around that stuff. So if you're a person trying to get from your place to downtown to like a Jets game, or to the grocery store, then you're just a person going to the grocery store.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we should be, as a city, and as Manitobans, encouraging people to provide options for people to get to grocery stores and back without risking their lives.
Yeah. Also, I've got to credit that language back to Bike Winnipeg as well. They've had a great influence on my thought around how to talk about people who are cycling. So then within the wrench, you're going to be dealing with some of these people who have now had these first experiences, or some who are coming in with no experience at all. What's your ideal path for their interactions with the wrench? What does the step-by-step look like for that?
Well, we just want, it's like any kind of like service,
right?
Where you want to be clear about what your service is, right, as best as possible. So they set their expectations properly,
right,
in line with what you can probably deliver, and then just kind of meeting those expectations and removing as much friction as possible in that. So, like having a clear website, having a clear description of what your offerings are, providing a visualization of like how things are supposed to go, how things will likely go, and then people kind of just sign up for that. Yeah, and then our job is to deliver that as best as possible.
Right. So on the website, I noticed that workshops and classes are often the things that you're promoting. So that'd be an entry point. Where do people go from there? What's the next step for them?
Hopefully, learn how to fix their bike, learn how to ride their bike, and they can do that at like any level. So whether they're like children or youth or adults, and for them to have that skill base and that level of confidence to be able to do that. And then they should go out in the world and tell their friends. And then send more people our way. The Wrench does a very good job of being like a fun, nice place to be. Yeah. We had a chat the other day around music at the shop, and that because I walked in the other day and there wasn't any music, and I was like, "What's going on?" And they're like, "Well, we're." Anyway, they were doing something, and just like nobody had changed the music in a while, and I said, "Go over to the tape deck and find some like lo-fi hip hop something, and just put it on." And it's supposed to be a fun place to be, fun, supportive, having like little wins all the time, and it's social. To be honest, people like you hang out with cool people and have this like shared interest, and yeah, people like to nerd out on that stuff. Sorry, people are very into bikes. Like some people are really into bikes. There's a lot of variety and a lot of nuance.
Yeah,
that is possible to drill down to that level of nuance and like form opinions on that stuff. And so there's constant chatter about, whether like what type of component, what brand of component is better than. Yeah, and that's great, and I'm glad they enjoy that level of detail. I think I just like being outside, and I like not paying for parking, and having an increased level of activity built into my day, and that just makes me, I think, 5% happier in my life.
Right.
Yeah, and I think it's good for the environment. And
Yeah.
yeah, and my pocketbook, honestly, my family would normally have, the way our work schedules are, and that we have a kid, my family situation would normally have 2 cars.
Yep.
And we don't have to have 2 cars because I am a confident biker or a confident cyclist, and my wife is a confident cyclist, and so we make that work. We make it work all year, and I think that otherwise, personal finance wise, we'd be spending $600 a month more than what we're spending right now.
Yeah, that checks out with what I found when we changed to a no-car household. I calculated it out, and it saves us about $4,000 a year just in insurance and running costs.
Yeah.
Of not having a car.
Yeah, not even just buying the thing in the first place.
Yeah, no payments. The car was paid off.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just in keeping a car in our driveway
Yeah.
would have cost about $2,000, not even running it.
Yes. Right. Just
So
insurance.
absolutely, going bike, going active transit, and for myself, it's more of the public transit. I tend to walk and use bus more often.
Yeah.
But yeah, that change it's both environmental, it's financial, but it also changes the way you see the city and the places around you. That's going on a bit of a tangent there. We don't need to dive into the urbanism of Winnipeg. That's not what this is about. But yeah, you talked about the community at the Wrench. And when we were there, I noticed the bike stands where people are doing the work. They're set up in almost a small cluster of 8, where there's space at head height to just see all the way across. You can see what everybody's working on. You mentioned the tape deck, and there's this mound, actual stacks of cassettes.
Yeah.
And it shocked me to see cassettes.
Yeah.
This past year.
Yeah.
But yeah, it really has the feeling of people coming together to just work on the things they care about. And that there are other people who also care about that makes it a space where you can just sit and chat about the bikes or anything else as you're working.
Yeah.
Almost like what I imagine as the ideal of a third place. The place where you can just go and be in the hobby.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree. The physical setup of the Wrench is like that does add a bunch to being a workplace that is like, it is productive, and it is like nice to work in.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can be chatty if you want, and can also like keep working at the same time. But you can also like just listen to music and fix bikes.
Yeah.
Right, and that is awesome.
So then I'd like to ask a little bit more about your personal history.
Sure.
What brought you to working in social enterprise?
Oh, that's fun. In the beginning, so I studied conflict resolution in school. And so I completed my practicum, and it was like not good. It was just not good. I think the major occupation for mediators, or a good chunk of their work, is like settling divorce out of court, and which is like a useful thing, and I'm glad that there are mediators who are like up for that. I would just like it was not how I wanted to spend my days. While at the same time, while I was in school, I worked for Child and Family Services, and I did overnights in hotels when we used to do that. I did that because I'm like a helping kind of guy, and I'm good with kids, and I thought I could help those kids. So I worked with like, teenage boys, and I very quickly, like it was immediate, realized that I wasn't the right person to be helping those kids. Those kids needed their moms and dads. They needed their families, and their families were not available, I think for legit reasons, but that situation was not helpful either, and their moms and dads were not, like generally I think that it was like a stability thing, and I said I still wanted to help those kids, so why don't I go and try to help their moms and dads?
Okay.
Yeah, and the concepts and practice of mediation, right, and the study of conflict resolution, those same skills and thought processes lend themselves pretty readily to sales and to business. So, because good business is about providing people with good solutions, solving problems.
Listening well to what people need.
Listening well to what people need, right? And not just like what they want.
Yeah.
Right? So what you really want is to get what you need. And so to be able to structure things to help people get what they need, and in any kind of, it's very applicable. So I went from university, I went to Build, and Build in Winnipeg. And so I worked there for 3 years, and then I went to Manitoba Green Retrofit after that.
Right.
Yeah.
You were one of the founding members of MGR, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I showed up to Build. I was at Build a year before Sean.
Okay.
Yeah. And then Sean came, and then we were able to kick things up a notch.
Right.
Right.
So while you were at Build, what was the role you were doing there?
Well, to start, when I first started, my first job was to install 200 toilets.
Okay, so you were right there.
Oh, yeah.
In the work.
Yeah, yeah, and I did that that was my entry point, and I installed 200 toilets as part of their water efficiency program, and then I taught somebody else how to do that, and I moved into the office, and because the general manager before Sean was very old school, he didn't have a computer. He was paper pen, calculator, and a phone, and just like an old school contractor guy.
Yeah.
Big heart, good guy. Anyway, but I was good with computers, and I could do, I can run an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah.
And I can do math, and so I moved into the office, took over. I did all the estimations. And I did bigger projects, lots of energy efficiency. It's called Energy Efficiency Manitoba now, but it was born out of the low income programming that Manitoba Hydro did.
Right.
They used to have that
electrical efficiency work generally.
Yeah,
LED lights, fluorescence at that time. I would have assumed.
Fluorescence. They had a whole water section that you could actually do with hydro. Anyway, that was all my numbers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I did all their homework, and then they
they stole off your sheet.
We were happy for that to happen. When the contract came back with the pricing and stuff, and it had a Manitoba Hydro, letterhead on it, I was like, great, this is accepted. We will do this for this price. Thank you. So that happened with water efficiency and their insulation. So attic and basement and wall insulation, that was all turned out to be my pricing.
Right. Okay. So that was the transition from plumbing installation, toilets, into the office, doing estimations, taking over the initial sales and estimations.
Yeah.
Then you moved to Purpose.
Yeah. So it's called Purpose Construction now.
Right.
Which is a way better name. And nonprofits, and this is something that we learned along the way. You probably feel the same way too, is that nonprofits are very bad at naming themselves.
Branding and marketing is a distinct weak point
in
the whole industry, and I hope to eventually make a small shift towards improving that.
Yeah.
But
so we made that mistake too. So it was called Manitoba Green Retrofit. We called it MGR in the beginning, and that was a response. That was a response to getting phone calls, because Build at that time was the largest residential insulator in the province. Right, we bought insulation by the semi truckload, and we insulated thousands of homes in Winnipeg, and we get phone calls from other people and who were not low income and weren't delivering service to low income people. And they're like, hey, can you come insulate my stuff? And we'd have to say no, because we asked our funder do you mind if we go and also do work for these other people? And they would say, that's not what you're funded for.
Right, so the funding limitations.
The limitations of the funding arrangements that Build had prevented us from,
Fascinating, okay.
Yeah, and then I couldn't take it one day. Somebody called, and they weren't from the city. They were from just outside the city, and they're like, I have a horse barn.
So that's a big job, okay.
It was a big job. And it was a horse barn, and they qualified. They qualified for a different hydro program that wasn't the low income file, but a different thing. And they're like, "You guys are the biggest thing in the province. Can you come do my job?" And I said, "I really want to come do your job." And and so I told Sean, I'm like, "We're just gonna do this," and he said, "We asked, we can't." And I'm like, let's not tell anybody. I'm just gonna do it anyway. Because we were getting like 4 phone calls a week. And
it's so sad.
It was so sad because Builds was funded, right? So we had limited funding, and but we had like 75 resumes on our desk from everybody's cousin that worked there. And they were also struggling, right? And so the job is what we were trying to do, right? This is what we're trying to do, is we're just trying to help. I'm trying to help moms and dads. And the situation is that we had a good thing that people were willing to pay money for. And I had 75 resumes of people who were good to go, and they needed our help. And I had some bureaucrat quote me as something and said, sorry. And I was like, I can't take it anymore. So I said, we're just going to do it. And Sean said, we're not doing it. We're getting too much trouble. And I said, I'm going to do it anyway. And he said, the only way we're doing that is if we start a new company.
Make it something arm's length.
And we were in a hallway, like in a tight hallway. And I was like, fine. And he said, fine. And then we parted ways for 15 minutes, and came back and was like, okay, can we go to the company's office and we'll go do this? and then we were like, and then we went, the next day we went to the company's office and filled out paperwork, right? And we paid I think it was $200. Mm-hmm. And we selected we called around, we got 3 board members. We said just for the first year.
Got the minimum requirements to hit the incorporation.
We pulled bylaws. We pulled a set of bylaws from something else. Yeah. Right. We pulled it all together, and the next week we got the name reservation came through, and we had a new, and then we went to the bank and opened up a bank account, and I called the horse barn guy, and I said,
I can take your job now.
I can take your job. And it was $28,000 was that single job, and then so I gave a letter of I got a secondment from Build, right? They laid me off, right, or whatever, said I could come back if it didn't work, but they gave me and then I said, okay, well I'm going to take this time and go do this job, and can I rent your insulation equipment for 5 days, and can you also lay off those 5 people over there, those 5 people, and I picked them, and they're going to come with me, keep your funding, right? They're going to come on my payroll.
Because then it's just a separate entity.
It's just a separate entity, and so I just we just went back and forth like that for 3 months. And then I had a kitty to I didn't need to borrow money or anything like that. I did everything on credit to start. Yeah. And it was and I took a loan from Bill too. Right?
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they just we wrote a loan agreement.
Because they'll have assets, and you could write a contract that says repayment plan. Okay.
Repayment plan, right? So I borrowed $25,000, And like the terms were like 2 months, right? Now give it back. And so we did. And that was how that went. And then Build would continue to get phone calls, right? They would say, I'm just going to pass you over, and like I had a desk, right? And I would take the contract. I would go and get Build employees. And what happened was we made room.
Right.
So we made room for new people to come in to Build.
Right, because then you're taking some of the people who have been trained, who have gone through the whole build process.
Yeah.
Then they have a more permanent job.
They had a more permanent job. And the folks that were a good fit for me, like if you graduated from Build, and Build was like 6 months, just funded for 6 months at that time. And somebody thought, the thinking was after 6 months, you would be like good to go. And you could like pull up your bootstraps and just go.
No other systemic problems.
No other systemic problems, right? And like that did happen for like 5% of the people.
Sure.
Like 3 or 5% of the people. After 6 months, if school was in the cards for you, you should go to school. Like continue with school. If you could get a job with another installation company or something else in the private sector, you should go do that. But what happened was that the people needed more than 6 months, right? But I knew that they were good at their jobs at Build. There was a legit job for somebody to feed an installation machine, and I needed somebody who like knew how to like measure, work the hoses and stuff like that. But they needed more time, and I was able to be that second stage, more permanent. We didn't have any funding, so I didn't have to let anybody go for some arbitrary time. Yeah, and we had a thing that we could do.
Right. So essentially, you built a pipeline.
We just built a pipeline
through Build into MGR, so that any jobs that Build couldn't within their funding agreements, you could just pass them off.
Yeah.
The same people get the work.
Yeah.
You essentially borrowed the seed money and then got the first couple jobs enough to keep the thing running.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So MGR's running, and
so
at this point, MGR, your time there's concluded. What next? Where did you move from there?
I just want to tell you, like, because it worked backwards too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it worked backwards too, because insulation was like great business, and Hydro's programming like really helped do that. And if they brought it back in a significant way, it would do it again.
Right.
Anyway, but we found that there were still more people who needed work, right? And so MGR was working with, we started working with like landlords, and one of the larger landlords, and we were insulating and doing that stuff. And then we also found that they needed like painting, and they needed all this other stuff. And they had rental, like Manitoba Housing at that time had vacant rental units that were just sitting because they couldn't get them turned over for a number of reasons.
Turned over meaning some renovations, some paint and patchwork.
Get them ready to be re-rented. Their average turnaround time was like 108 days between someone leaving and somebody coming in, and they were wanting to get their people into their units. We've had a housing crisis for a long time. So anyway, so I started doing work for them, and there was just a ton of work.
Mm-hmm.
And so I needed additional people to grow MGR. So I went and I said, well, I've got this other connection here. These guys do great programming. This work is actually fairly repetitive. I think it would be a good fit. So I developed all the pricing, right? And then I went back and I said, I got this. You gotta let these folks also come do work, and this is what you're going to pay them. And then it kind of just happened. So then Build started doing interior renos.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Is that when it started to be more than the training program, but in addition, it had the fee-for-service work?
So that kind of developed later.
Okay.
The fee-for-service work came online for Build once the idea of social enterprise started to take hold.
Okay. There's probably more on that. I have an interview back in the backlog with Art Ladd when he was I think it's executive director at Build. So there's more on that story there.
Sure.
But after MGR, what was next?
So while I was at MGR, we were doing lots, like Sean and I had taken that dynamic, pass stuff back and forth by going to the company's office and building things, doing stuff like that. We've been doing that reasonably frequently. We would go and do something new every 18 months, right? and so after a while we told people about it, and we said we're having a lot of success, and people asked us, like, how are you doing that, right? Like, how? And so we said it's best if you come and see. So we would have people from all across the country come. And we ended up being like these like semi-professional like tour guides.
Social enterprise tour guides.
Social enterprise tour guides.
Come see how it works.
Come see how it works. And that wasn't, I mean, we were fine with that, because what we're pretty agnostic about, like, I'm not super pumped about like water efficiency.
Right.
I don't get like very excited about like wall insulation.
Yeah, it's important work that needs to get done.
Yeah, but it's just work.
Yeah.
Right? I'm trying to get moms and dads stabilized so they can get their kids back, right? And I'm trying to do that in Winnipeg, and that situation exists across the country.
Yeah.
So if somebody, I can't be there to do it for them. We just need more. We need more stuff.
We need more people doing this work.
We need more people doing this work, and we somehow figured out that you can just go and do it.
It's surprising how many things work that way.
I'm like continually like surprised and disappointed at the same time, and that other people like Sean and Lucas aren't that smart. Like Sean and Lucas are not that smart, and we say that to each other all the time, but we don't let people tell us no, and we just go and do stuff, and then we have a very good batting average. To be honest, we have a very good batting average, and we take other steps along the way. We mitigate risk.
Of course.
And if something doesn't work, we cut our losses.
You have to.
Right? But it doesn't dissuade us from like trying. And what has happened is like we have these things blossom, and we're also not predetermined on what they are, right? We're trying to get moms and dads jobs, because that's a stabilizing factor, and then they can get the kids back.
Because in our current situation, jobs is income is housing, income is food security.
Yeah, it's like a really base thing, and it's also like a level of confidence, and it's like being proud of yourself, and it's also those kids seeing their moms and dads get up and go to work every day, and then that is something that is very healthy and that the kid will want and strive to do themselves.
Right, creating a culture that's handed down through the family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what we're trying to do, and like we need more help. So we like invite people to come and tour, and we become these tour guides, and then like after a while we found that our skill sets are in the founding and the getting going.
Yep.
Right, and refinement's not our skill set. It's not.
Empathize with that.
Yeah. It's all like other people can get excited about that. I'm and I won't take any guff for like any of the systems I built either. No. Because they didn't exist before.
So, well, I mean, you gotta make something that just barely works so that you can start.
Yes.
And there is a totally different skill set with creating something new compared to maintaining something that exists and improving upon it.
Yeah.
So, and I'm definitely in that first camp as well. Building things, making something new that is just going to work enough to get towards where we're going.
Yeah.
I love that space.
Right on. Yeah. So Sean and I would tell you that we're entrepreneurs.
Right.
And then once the thing is going well enough, it's healthy for us to shift them over to business managers.
Right. So that happened with Build. That happened with MGR.
Yeah. It happened. It's happened with everything.
Yeah.
And and that's like a normal part of our rhythm as we go around and like we spot a gap and are able to vision how to like make use of that gap, right? And then mitigate our risk and try.
Yeah.
And then if it works, we like build it, like really build it out, and then capitalize on it, and then somebody else can come in and take it to the next level, like mine the the last 10%, and refine it and do that stuff. That's great.
Yeah, make it something that survives beyond when you're involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that makes the story of Aki Energy make a lot more sense to me, because up until now I've been wondering, why would you leave in something that's working and making those changes you're hoping for? But if that's your goal, is to make the new systems so that other people can manage them, it makes perfect sense.
Yes. Yeah, that's a better role. That's a better role for those folks. Sean and I wouldn't be happy. We wouldn't be happy doing refining.
Right.
Anyway. So we are our happiest when we are spotting the gaps, we're just noticing the gaps,
right,
and then developing something to address it.
So that's what Encompass has been all about.
So Encompass was designed to be a space for people who are running social enterprise,
right,
as practitioners, and we went to because we got invited and we went to conferences and stuff, social enterprise conferences, 2,000 people there, and like it was hard to meet people who were actually running things. Lots of people studying, lots of people funding, lots of I'm like, but where are the people with the payroll problems, right?
Right. So you're meeting all the people who are doing work around social enterprise, but not the social entrepreneurs or the social enterprise managers.
Yeah.
Okay.
And our goal is to like make more of these things, and so we needed to find the people who were capable of founding things and getting them going and doing the scrappy stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those people at those conferences can be found. They are in the lobby on the phone solving a problem. Yeah.
So, okay. From MGR, sounds like you had a bunch of other initiatives that you started up, spun out, let other people continue them on. Maybe you can send me a list later and I'll include them in the description or something.
Well, we killed a lot of bed bugs.
Oh yeah.
Right?
The bed bugs was that part of the MGR?
Yeah.
Okay. So bed bug removal and dealing with infestations.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was awesome.
Yeah. Aki Energy and Aki Foods. That sounds like it was part of that whole cycle.
Mm-hmm. We did temporary labor for a little bit. And we leased vehicles for a while.
Okay.
Yeah, just like whatever it was the idea was just to like give us the resources, the flexibility, and the latitude just to like move on an opportunity while mitigating risk that would let us move closer to our goal.
Right. And that, on the whole, those many different initiatives has now brought you to being executive director at the Wrench. Very interesting. I love hearing how that trajectory, because this is becoming an executive director of an established organization is a very different situation.
It is different.
So what made you choose this role?
What made me choose this role? I needed to do something different. The goal of Encompass changed.
Oh, okay.
Because Sean did it first, because Sean lives like 6-7 years in the future. And he explained what the future was like, and I was like, holy crap, like we have to do that now. And so Sean and I spent 3 years talking with people across the country about how we can literally solve a bunch of our really sticky endemic problems that are super expensive and just so persistent.
Right.
And like stuff to do with like justice and stuff to do with homelessness, right? It has implications in like healthcare and the environmental stuff, and it's really, really powerful. and people did not get it. Maybe they got it, maybe they were too chicken. There was something else in place that was preventing it.
Yeah.
I think maybe it's like a flaw. There might be like a serious flaw in how we either do politics, with like a 4-year election cycle. Yeah. Or
So these systemic, broader issues.
There's something that prevents us from acting in our own best interest.
Okay.
Yeah. And so Sean and I were talking about just like doing stuff in our own best interest and then saving a bunch of money at the same time.
This is the stuff he's detailing, the beautiful bailout?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's about looking at how we spend our money in more of a full cost accounting way.
Right. Bringing in the externalities, the things that otherwise we don't count.
Yeah. Or not even externalities, because like externalities is a whole other issue, but just like counting things this year or recognizing them this year because you're going to count them next year.
Okay.
If you think about it like that. So like.
Right, so if you make a change now, that'll affect hospitalization rates next year.
Yeah.
Accounting for some of that.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's about pulling future expense.
Right, not kicking the can down the road anymore.
Not kicking the can down the road anymore because if you recognize that like you're going to spend $1 million a year, you spend $1 million this year on a thing. Last year you spent $1 million on the same thing, and the year before, same. Next year we probably think we're going to spend $1 million on that, right? So like just like project that out, not even too far, just like 3-4 years, and then just recognize that if you know how you could do something different, that would save you money.
Right.
On this thing that you're planning on spending money on. So how does that look? So you said that you save $400 a month riding a bicycle, right?
Yeah.
The reason you say you save it is because otherwise you would be spending it on driving.
Right, because we're working on loss aversion there. We're thinking, I would have had to spend this much, and that hurts.
It should hurt.
Yeah.
Right? But I think you can think about it in the positive too, right? Mm-hmm. So I now have $400 extra, right, a month. And so I don't know about you, but I bought, I don't know what your bike is. You have a regular pedal bike?
Oh yeah, it's just a standard, just a hybrid.
Hybrid, nice getting around bike.
Yeah.
I have an electric bike. And the reason I got that is because, and it was $2,000. But I feel like by getting that electric bike, I saved $2,000. Do you know what I mean?
Right, because then you don't have the car.
You don't have the car.
We're not even then counting the time you save, because e-bikes are going to get you places faster.
Yeah.
And all of the other trips you wouldn't have made if the distance had been more of a hassle.
So if we are honest with ourselves and say, you know what, and there's maybe we need to wait for an inflection point. Like maybe there was a point where you were like, I could get a car this year, and if I get a car, I'm going to spend or if I keep my car, right? So if you keep your car, you're going to put in your budget $400 a month. This year, that would be $4,800.
Yeah.
Right. So in our mind, you can apply that to like justice and health and the environment, right? Same thinking. And so what we're suggesting with outcomes purchasing is when we apply it to biking, the point of biking is to be able to to use it as transportation to get it around.
Yeah.
And so I now have two options. I can spend to get from A to B. I have my budget. My top line of my budget is $4,800. I have other options in terms of getting from A to B.
Right.
The car is $4,800. The bus is how much is the bus? $180 a month?
Oh, not even that much. Probably closer to 80.
80 month. We'll call it 100.
Sure.
Okay. So that's $1,200
over a year. Yeah.
Over a year, right? Yeah. A bike, a nice bike, $1,000.
Once.
One time. this year. Just think about it. We're not even going into the future. Just this year, right?
Yeah.
Nice bike, $1,000. And in all of that thinking, if you go with the car, that's the established budget. And any other option you choose, right, is you are, when Sean and I say you're saving money, you really are saving money.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I chose, we need 2 adults in our house need to get around. We can either spend $4,800 on a car this year. I'm going to choose, my choice is going to be, I'm going to get an e-bike. I'm going to spend $2,000, get a nice e-bike.
Right.
And I'm going to love that thing. And so I feel like I got an e-bike plus $2,800 this year.
Yeah, because that's the extra money that in the budget that wouldn't be there if the car was.
Yeah, and that solves for because the outcome that we're trying to solve for is transportation.
Yeah.
So having that conversation, and when people are listening to this podcast, I just explained this for 10 minutes just straight, and people are probably confused about it already. Just know that the idea is that you're going to have a projected expense, and then that does a thing that you should try to be solving for. Transportation, public safety.
Fewer arrests.
Fewer arrests, right?
Fewer people spending a night in the hospital.
Fewer, a hospital wait time, right? Emergency room wait time. Just solve for the things you're actually trying to do, right? Don't focus on the actual intervention. Just be I'm going to spend $300 million on public safety in Winnipeg this year, right? To date, that has meant a lot of police officers.
Yep.
$300 million, right?
Yep.
So, but what we're purchasing when we're hiring those cops, right? I'm a fan of cops, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to purchase public safety.
Yeah. And cops have a very important role.
Yes.
There are other options as well.
I want us to consider other options in the pursuit of the outcome of public safety.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that has been a digression for the purpose of Encompass.
Yeah.
Had been shifting.
Yeah.
Also, if you want more information on the outcomes purchasing, I actually did an interview with Sean about 3.5 years ago.
Okay.
Right when that was all kicking off.
Right on.
So, there's more info there as well. I also can link to the book.
If anybody,
it's a great resource.
Also, if anybody wants to contact me with a summary that is more direct and effective than that 10-minute thing that I just did, I would be really, really pleased to have a conversation about that.
just to tighten up the summary?
Just to tighten it up.
Okay. So that was the shifting purpose of Encompass Co-op.
Yeah.
Which led to you...
So we just had that conversation across the country in a number of different ways. We did focus on justice because it's very expensive. However much you slice the pie, it's $50,000 to keep people in jail.
Yep.
And there's a known portion of the population that just comes in and out of jail. That the intervention of jail does not do what it's supposed to do.
Yes, where jail is almost more of a housing expense for them than anything else.
Right. The idea behind putting somebody in jail is so that they don't want to go, so they don't go back to jail.
Yeah.
Right. And for a good chunk of the population, that intervention, in terms of providing public safety, is not effective.
Yes.
Or sorry, it is effective to a point, about 20% of the time, and it has a cost.
Yeah.
Right. So what we would propose is just taking other options that would achieve that same amount, and the total budget that you get to spend is $50,000 a year, and you have to beat 20% effectiveness rate.
Right. Okay. So that's the idea, and you're spreading this around the country. It's the outcomes purchasing as a model of social impact and systems change.
Anyway, it didn't stick.
Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't stick. So I don't know. We're not sure why, but it didn't stick. So, and I got tired of selling something that people weren't buying.
Right.
That's what. So when since you've had that interview with Sean, we did Encompass for a long time. People didn't hear us. And so we decided one last attempt, we'd try to say it louder.
Right.
So Sean ran for mayor of Winnipeg.
Right. And if I'm remembering my figures right, got around 20% of the vote.
Sean did really well.
Yeah, especially for a candidate that has no history in electoral politics.
He's got no history in electoral politics. We tried to say that thing, because Winnipeg's cheap as well.
Notoriously.
Notoriously cheap, and we were fine with that, and we tried to appeal to that type of sensibility.
Yep.
And we said, hey, good news, we have the resources we need. What you guys are asking for, because there's this cloud of like fear that comes over the populace when politicians try to get reelected and start talking about crime. It's intense, right?
Yep.
Right? And so and Winnipeg has
this very same issue.
we got the same issue, right? We have all kinds of stuff, and really the drivers around that cause people to commit criminal acts, right, are, you know, they're varied, but like they're actually like reasonably predictable. Mm-hmm. For the stuff that the population is concerned about.
For 99% of crime, there is a predictable input that led to it, instability of some kind.
There's an instability of some kind, like for a good chunk of it, right?
Yeah.
For a good chunk of it, like if you're getting your like barbecue stolen out of the backyard, or your garage broken into, right? There's a reason why that's happening, right? And it turns out that there's things that we can do that will reduce those things forever. And cops is only a very small part of that solution,
yes,
of the intervention. So our message to Winnipeg was, we tried to explain outcomes purchasing in terms of all the things that Winnipeggers care about or said they cared about, and we didn't say outcomes purchasing.
No,
because it's too highbrow and
that's policy wonk language.
It's policy wonky, but we said, look, we have $300 million next year when the crime rate goes up by like 2%. The cops are going to come back and ask for another 2%, right? Which is $6 million. So like, hey, Winnipeg, do you think there are other things we could do for $6 million that would address 2% of our crime?
Right.
And crime going up by 2% is what the status quo is. Like that, we're betting on that, we're banking on that, we're going to budget for that.
Right. That's just simple rates of population increase. The number of people here will increase about the same. So
about the same.
We can assume that.
We can assume that, right? So the budget is like $6 million. Like, can we do better than hiring more cops? We think we can, right?
So that was the bulk of the campaign.
That was the bulk of the campaign, right? And then you can also apply that. You can apply that to road infrastructure, mm-hmm, right? You can apply that to Winnipeg has like a fantastic, like world-class like tree canopy.
Yep.
Right. What's the value in a tree? Okay. Right. For your property value at your house, right? That is worth $10,000 to you. Your house is $10,000 worth more because you have a tree out front.
Right.
Right. In terms of like home heating, like you can just keep going.
Oh yeah.
You know.
The knock-on effects are huge in any of these issues.
Any of these issues. So. And we said, hey, Winnipeg, good news. We have the resources we need. Like we don't need to do a crazy like big tax increase. We'll do what we have planned, and we're going to get better results.
It just reallocated a bit.
We'll reallocate it a bit. We just think we want to introduce other options to achieve the same goals of transportation, public safety, right, environmental sustainability.
Yeah.
Right, all those things.
So it was a long and hard-fought campaign.
Long and hard-fought campaign. Anyway, we lost that too, right?
So you took your shot.
So we took a shot, and it was intense. Sean started early.
Oh yeah.
right?
He mentioned it in circles that I was aware of, a year and a half.
Yeah.
So a full year before campaigning properly started.
Yeah, and we ran a proper campaign.
Yep.
We had 50 pieces, right? There were four really large planks, right? But we had 50 pieces like that were fully developed.
Mm-hmm. Well, and
And-
Sean was going to the events, doing the speaking, doing the debate trail, all of that.
Yeah, yeah, and so that was really intense, and I kind of wanted a break.
That makes sense. It's exhausting.
It's exhausting, and I was a little dismayed with the response from Winnipeg. I was dismayed with that, and that was us saying outcomes purchasing louder. That was as loud as we could possibly say it, and it didn't take. So I told Sean that I just needed a break,
Right.
and I will always take solace in working hard at the things that I can do and I can control.
Right.
So moving over and working with an organization like the Wrench, which is like has a great reputation, is doing great work, and but in fact has been like a little bit insular. They haven't they as an organization they haven't been part of like a larger network. They haven't been doing a lot of promotion, and they have been at max capacity for like 8 years.
This story is all too common in nonprofits across the city.
Yeah, so they haven't been able to figure out how to like they went from like tiny to small, and they haven't been able to break out of small,
Right.
right? And really they are like medium.
Yeah, based on the size of the space you were working in and the number of programs and activities that are going on, absolutely, I would call it that.
Yeah, so I'm actually like decent at like doing that step.
Yeah, the change between things.
The change between things, going like Sean is very good at going from absolutely nothing to tiny.
Okay.
And then I'm decent at going from tiny to small and small to medium.
Right.
Yeah. And those are the really fun parts. And then we'll see how big we can get it, and it can stay at medium for a long time, or we can get other things going that are also, that also will complement it and that are separate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I've noticed that there's lots of working on the network effects, trying to get engaged with other people who are doing similar but different work to amplify each other. I've noticed the work that you've been doing in that area.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so, okay, that's really neat to hear, because from when I'd heard you taking the ED position, it didn't make sense to me. But it's nice to know some of the background. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a worthy thing, and it's a great it is a great place to work. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's different, to be honest, coming in as a new, because they were fully developed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they have their own culture, and they don't think I'm as funny as I do. So yeah, and they have an identity that is still it's still wrapped up in where they came from. So
right.
They were like three punks all three little punks like all stacked up on each other like in a trench coat pretending to be a nonprofit, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So they don't see themselves. They've had trouble identifying with like other more established organizations.
Right, so the culture is still stuck in that scrappiness.
Yeah.
The culture hasn't caught up to actually being a sizable force in the cycling community in Winnipeg.
Yeah, I'm like, you guys won. You guys won. You did really well, and like you're established, and like the stuff you were talking about, like it's happening, and other people are doing it, and like it's becoming accepted. Like
What's next?
What's next, right? And how do we like encourage that continuation? Like you don't have to be like so punky anymore. So like today, like our membership application went in for the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce.
Become part of the pond.
Right, and we're going to, and it's still mission oriented. We're going to use that network to increase our impact.
Yep.
Right, and they need like they may need our help too.
Well, and going right back to the beginning of this conversation, that's opening it up to a different group of people who otherwise wouldn't identify.
That's right.
Neat.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's fun.
Now, there are two directions I'd like to go. First, talking more about those threshold problems, talking about going from small to medium. What are some of the, or tiny to small, what are some of the common issues that are present in almost every situation you've dealt with? Like, for me, the one I always think of is the point where you have enough work for other staff, but not quite enough work to pay for other staff.
Yeah.
Like, what are those kinds of problems that come up all the time? And is there a method you've used that works a little more than half the time?
Yes. Yeah. Sure. That's very interesting. First of all, I would recommend just getting very clear on what you're trying to do.
Okay.
And what you're good at. And
striking into that value proposition, finding the value you're actually offering.
finding the value you're actually offering and finding somebody who is valuable too.
Right.
Right. And just having like a very positive working relationship with that person and making, and that can be a friendly entity, right? It probably should be to start.
Absolutely.
And you're going to make like an agreement with that person that you are not going to fail. And that's the deal. You do not fail. You are allowed to make mistakes along the way, but your agreement and you need to be able to like look somebody in the eye and be like, we will not fail. And you are going to do everything you can not like that just is not in the cards. You are not going to fail.
Right. So for the sake of people listening in, if they haven't done this before, they've never been a part of the crazy leap of starting something new on their own. Does it take any special education or knowledge to make this agreement?
No, it does not. No, it takes some because what you're asking them to do is to have some faith. Mm-hmm. Right, and to take a chance on you, right? They have other options probably, and they would probably, but they're wanting something that you have or that you can bring. So they want to work with you. They don't have to.
They want this other organization, this other entity to exist.
They want it to exist. They have a reason for supporting you. You want to be able to deliver that thing,
right?
And you are not going to fail.
Yep.
And you need to make a plan on how that's going to happen.
Okay.
Just in case.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you are not going to sleep at night.
Yeah.
So make that plan, understand what that is, and if you have to like activate your fail-safe, right? If that happens, know that might like something serious is going to happen, and like you might like destroy your company. But like you cannot fail. Mm-hmm. And you're going to put in place all kinds of like different strategies to reduce your risk, to mitigate your risk, and you're going to set yourself achievable things. Mm-hmm. You're probably going to push your existing staff and probably yourself to like 120%.
Yep.
Yeah, for a limited period of time, right? For like a period of time, and you just like get everybody on board. Like you need a team that's willing to do that. And that's probably like you need to do that with yourself, and it can't be forever because that's when burnout will happen.
Yeah.
Just project on how long that will be, and just like tell everybody this is what's going to happen, and that you need their buy-in, and you're going to try to do something. You're just going to try to do something, and it's going to be 6 weeks, and we're going to go to 120%, and the idea being that that's like a doable thing,
right?
And then make your plans and activate, like go, because you really need to be, and by 120%, like you also might need to like run your money at 120% too. So you need like your banker to be on board with like,
you gotta have a buffer somewhere.
You gotta have your buffer. Like where's that 20% coming from?
Yep.
Yeah, and when it works, that's when you get to the other side of that thing, you can dial it back, right? And you need to have a plan to be able to dial it back.
Of course.
Yeah. So, but like how you cross that bridge from like nothing to tiny and tiny to small is you have to crank it to 120% for a limited period of time, knowing that that there is another side of it where you will dial it back.
Okay. So
Yeah.
if I were to make an analogy, it's kind of like preparing for a marathon.
Yeah.
You know in advance when it's going to be, you have a system in place to train,
Yeah.
but then when it's happening, you go.
Yeah.
And the goal is just to hit that finish line.
Yeah.
After which you get to fall over and rest for a while.
Yes, you get to fall over and rest for a while, and so you just plan that out.
Right.
Yeah.
And the other angle I want to ask is, in your journey to where you have come now, who are some of the people that have been the biggest influences on the way that you think about this or the way the work happens?
Oh, I'm not sure. I've seen a lot of people when I was younger. Well, maybe it's more about how I value like what I want, what I'm looking for in work.
Okay.
Maybe.
Sure.
I have a good one for that.
Absolutely. Take it however you want.
I traveled when I was in my early 20s across Canada, and I volunteered full time. And I met 20 like adults who were like well into their careers, and all they talked about was the weekend. And lots of people had like, they knew what their number was for either how much money their like RSP needed to be at, or when their pension was going to kick in or whatever, and they like knew that number, and they were really, really, really looking forward to it. And they didn't talk about their work. It was just other stuff they talked about. And I just didn't want to like, they looked like they were trapped. And they were not enjoying themselves.
Yeah, they were just riding it out until they get the reward.
Yeah. And so I wondered why that was. And so I figure that they were trapped in things that they didn't like doing, because they needed to have enough. They didn't feel secure enough. So I've done stuff in my life to make sure that I never have to do that. Yeah. So my lifestyle is a little simpler. I have one car and an e-bike, and I don't have to. I don't have to stay at a job because I have to pay off my couch. Like my couch doesn't own me.
Yeah.
That happened when I got married. We took out like
the initial furniture.
The initial
money.
furniture. We went somewhere and got like pre-approved for, like $8,000 worth of furniture, and it came home, and then it took us like 5 years to pay that off. And I hated that the whole time, and I'm like, I never want to do that again. So, yeah.
Yeah.
And my house is, I live in like a modest house, and my friends bought houses. I remember my friends, they bought a house in like Waverly West, with a 30-year mortgage, like when they were doing that. And this guy, nice guy, and he talked for 25 minutes about the quality and the complexity and the elegance of the molding around, like the doors and stuff. And I was like, and then he said his house was, at that time it was like $420,000. He's like, but I could afford it. It's a 30-year mortgage. And I'm like, that's 30 years. And like, what happens if you like stop liking what you're doing, and you just have to? We were like, yeah.
It's the lifestyle lock.
Yeah. So
okay.
I've chosen to do things that where I've like organized my life so that I can do things that I'm really interested in, and that I find and I don't have to be somewhere where I don't want to.
Right.
So that's kind of nice.
So a combination of that level of security to know that if situations change, if all of a sudden you don't want to be building something new, you want to go and try a different executive director position, you can afford to do that.
Yeah.
To keep enjoying the things that you're working on.
Yeah.
Yeah, life is too short to spend between 30 and 50 hours a week working on things that you don't care about.
Yeah, and I recognize that I've had a lot of luck and I have some privilege, right, that has allowed me to like make for that to happen.
Yes.
I recognize that. I feel like I've like made that happen though. I've like stuck to it. Yeah, it didn't because like this is like really getting on a tangent.
Yeah.
Anyway, as far as direction goes, for like how I work or how I make decisions, it does like some of that does emanate from conflict resolution training.
Right.
And how we make decisions as a company, if we're contemplating something new, or something comes up, it does provide some clarity to perform exercises, just thought experiments to vision, if we go this way, what's that going to feel like?
Yeah.
Right? Or if we go this way, what's that going to feel like? And so it is helpful, I find, to do those, to spend some thoughtful time considering if we take this course of action, is it going to move us closer or further away from our goal?
Yep.
Is it going to make things easier or more complicated? Yeah. And that kind of thing influences, whether or not we get a new location, right? Whether or not we get another mechanic, right? Will this like make things easier or more complicated? And so in general, we shoot for closer to our target and easier.
The way it should be.
The way it should be, and that kind of just and when I say it that way to our people, people find that calming, and that we and I'm also open to being influenced on it.
Right.
Explain to me, I'm new. Explain to me how this thing that we've been doing it this way for a long time. I hear there's other options. Explain to me how we are doing things the easiest and most straightforward way.
Well, easy will change based on the context that you have around
Yeah.
it. So
Exactly. And tradition is not a good reason.
Too many people are stuck because of tradition.
Yeah, and
we've always done
it's
it.
the way we've always done it, and that's fine. But you need to like elaborate, finish that sentence.
Yeah, the moment it is just because that's the way we've done it, instead of we've done it that way because history or
because
something.
it's like the best way to do it.
Sure.
And by best we mean it's like the other ways make things more complicated.
Yeah.
It's fine.
So to end off, is there, for people who are coming into social enterprise, they're new to managing or they want to start their own venture, is there one piece of advice you'd want to leave them with? One statement?
The important part is to try. Right? The important part is to start. And just start. If you and plan on changing your plan. And what that means is like it's important to do thinking ahead of time and visualize how things are going to go. And then know that is a process of renewal. And please do not stick to your initial plan.
It's probably not fully thought through.
That's the worst. That would be bad advice.
Yep.
So you want to like go out, listen, be observant, respond to what you find, and like if you find more opportunity, go for it. Like if you find less opportunity, back off. Yeah.
I can definitely agree with that. I actually started doing this. Right now, I work as social enterprise development. I help managers. I do help with marketing. I started doing photos for nonprofits.
Yeah.
Just because it was a general communications help. And you've got to change along the way.
Yes.
When things aren't working or when you find that it's not where you want to be, finding ways to adjust. Absolutely. I definitely agree with that statement.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing will tell you, Sean says this, he's like the social enterprise will start talking to you. And he's not wrong.
Yeah.
You know, like it'll be very clear as to what you need to be working on, and like you should do things that are working, do that more, and then things that aren't working, try to do that less.
Yep.
So
it sounds so simple when you put it that way.
And when you think about it like that, then that's just, if you were to explain it to a small child as to why you're doing something a certain way, that's how the crux of what you're trying to get across. I'm just trying to make it so that people in Winnipeg will make it so that they can ride their bicycle more often.
Yep.
Because it's good for everybody. Yeah. So we're going to employ all the tactics, and we're going to employ all the tools to be able to do so.
All right. Thank you very much for coming and talking with me.
Yeah, I love that you're doing this, and I appreciate the conversation.
And thank you for listening. If you liked this episode, please share it with somebody else. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns about this or any other episode, please reach out to us, info@strategymadesimple.ca. If you have any questions about social enterprise, how to do it, or how to improve your social enterprise, again, please reach out, info@strategymadesimple.ca. And lastly, if you're trying to improve your marketing for your social enterprise, here at Strategy Made Simple, we are in the process of developing a course to properly show the value that you offer to your customers and how to express it to them. If you'd like to be notified when this course goes live, please fill in the form through the link in the description, and we'll make sure you know as soon as it's available. Now, as you go to make connections, to figure out what's possible, and then to do it, keep it simple.